Hey there, macro folks. This is Mr. Hooker, and this is going to be Long Run Economic Growth number 2, Chapter 9, looking to wrap up Module 2. So here we go. Growth accounting. So growth accounting is just estimates of the contribution of each major factor in the aggregate production function to economic growth. So what does everything contribute? So total factor productivity, the amount of output that can be produced with a given amount of factor inputs. So when total factor productivity increases, the economy can produce more output. That just kind of makes sense, right? If the factors become more productive, output increases. Um, so with the same quantity of physical capital, human capital, and labor. So if the factors become more productive, then we can be more productive with everything we have. So technological progress raises productivity, shifts the aggregate production function upward. So productivity using 1950 technology, productivity using 2020 technology, we just shift upward. We're making more stuff, right? Seems simple. Increases in total factor productivity, central to economic growth. They happen over time. Um, let's think about computers for a second. I was watching Hidden Figures the other night, and they had those punch card computers from 1960s. The punch card and tape computers, yeah, the first like big IBM machine. And today you've all got like nice laptops that'll run on a battery for hours and do probably 20,000 times what they, 20, 2,000 times what that thing would do. They said that thing would do 24,000 calculations in a second. Um, I imagine we can do way more than that. We're somewhere in the millions now. Um, so it's crazy when you think about like how much more we can do with that today than those. So technological progress drives that increase. And according to BLS, over the period from 848 to 22, American labor productivity rose about 2.1% a year. So 49% of that rise explained by increase in physical and human capital per worker. The rest is rising total factor productivity, mostly technological progress. We got a lot of cool toys, ladies and gentlemen. What about natural resources? Natural resources certainly influence productivity, but in the modern world, they're less important than human or physical capital. Um, Japan is the prime example for that. They have very few natural resources, but very high real GDP per capita. Nigeria is a resource-rich nation, but a very low real GDP per capita. Japan has to basically import every natural resource they use to make stuff. And they're darn good at doing that. Nigeria has everything at their fingertips, and they are so corrupt. Their government is so corrupt. They just trip over themselves. They can't get through it. It's just bad. Um, you know, everybody that helps them, they just basically go in there and they corrupt their government even more. It's really weird. Rapidly growing economies excel at three things: savings and investment spending. So understand there's a relationship there. We will get to this a little bit later. I think it's actually the next module. So there's a relationship between savings and investment. So savings and actual investment are equal. And if you're in equilibrium, savings and planned investment are equal. So these are things that you need because you need the savings to do investment. It's a it's a thing. So the savings on the household side is equal to the investment on the firm side. You also need education. Um, so for a in a really in a sense, this is why economists are a little upset about the way that um, some things are being dismantled currently in education in the U.S. because it will set back our economic growth in a large sense. Um, and once you set it back, you're not going to put it back on track. You'll set it back for 100 years. You can do this in about 5 years. You'll set us back 100. So understand that's kind of how that works. Research and development, which is somewhat tied to education. Um, you know, Firms need to be able to research and develop new products, and that also relies on the fact that they have access to education institutions, um, data, science, all of those things. So savings and investment spending in 2021, investment and spending was 42% of China's GDP compared with only 21% in the US. So money for investment spending comes from savings. Countries with that have high investment spending do so because they have high domestic savings. So if you have the savings, you'll have the high investment, and then you'll just keep rolling. It becomes a great cycle. Education, China's success at adding human capital is one key to its spectacular long run growth. They have a ton of students, and we used to take in a ton of Chinese students here in America and educate them, and we charged them a ton of money to do so. It was a big money maker for U.S. colleges and universities. We're not doing that as much anymore, so that's a lot of lost money for us. Um, Research and development, spending to create, implement new technologies. Scientific advances make new technologies possible. So R&D translates scientific knowledge into useful products and processes. Um, so U.S. businesses were among the first to adopt R&D. So in 1875, Thomas Edison created the first modern industrial research lab known as Bell Labs. Okay. Um, so it's one of those things. You do it, and nowadays a lot of it is tied with large flagship research universities. And I think here there's been some with like Monsanto and Iowa State. They got in a big fight over one. Um, because understand there's dual purposes, right? Um, Businesses get into this to make money. Research institutions get into this to help people. So sometimes there's this whole like dual motive, and they come out of it with a little bit of a misunderstanding about how it's going to be used. It gets kind of funny sometimes. Government in promoting economic growth. So government policies can increase the economy's growth rate through 6 different channels. Subsidies to infrastructure. So infrastructures like roads, power lines, ports, information networks, and other things. So information networks, think internet. Um, Believe it or not, there's a lot of places that still don't have internet, cell service, things like that. Where I grew up, they still to this day do not have cell service, and internet is somewhat questionable. We're just in the middle of flipping nowhere. Good roads are essential. Um, Power lines, especially buried power lines, are better than raised power lines because raised power lines with the transportation system we have means that it's highly likely a truck will hit them. Um, Good ports are essential to trade. So, infrastructure people don't think about it, but a lot of the things that you rely on infrastructure and good infrastructure. Um, so China spends more on infrastructure than Western Europe and North America combined. Just sit there, let that sink in for a minute. China spends more on infrastructure than Western Europe and North America combined. And that's not just the US, that's North America. That is Canada, US, and Mexico combined, along with all of Western Europe. So, look, government subsidies to education. So, how much does the government spend on education? Literacy in China has been increasing more rapidly than in Argentina. Isn't because China's richer than Argentina, it's because the Chinese government has made education a priority. So where do you put that in your list of things we want done? If you make it a priority, hey, things get done, right? If you don't, well, things fall. Government subsidies to R&D. Internet grew out of the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, ARPANET, created by the U.S. Department of Defense. I was in grad school when that thing hit. University of Illinois was part of the big piece of that. They had what they called web crawler. You literally started at the University of Illinois website and crawled from website to website. You couldn't enter a web address. You had to crawl from website to website to get somewhere. It was a good 2, 3 hours to get a good web search going. It was insane. Golly, those were bad days for web searching. And then finally, Netscape came along, and that made it so much easier. That only took about 6 months to a year, but golly, it was like a godsend. Um, Maintaining a well-functioning financial system. So if people distrust your banks, they'll keep gold or cash in safe deposit boxes, under the mattress, in the mattress, where it can't be turned into productive investment spending. If financial system does not have access to your savings, they can't lend it out. The people can't earn interest on it. I've lived places where people were keeping money in their mattress. It doesn't end well. It's ugly. Stuff happens. Just saying. Protection of property rights. So, property rights are the legal rights held by owners of valuable items to dispose or keep those items as they choose. Intellectual property rights, the rights of innovators to accrue the rewards of their innovations. Generally, governments protect intellectual property rights by giving patents, which is basically government created temporary monopolies for innovation for the use or sale of their innovation. So, a patent is the exclusive right to for a production process, typically for a period of time. Could be 7 years, 16 years, 12 years, whatever that is. I think one goes up to 20 years. That is a patent. Then you also have trademarks or copyrights, which are 75 years plus the life of the owner plus 75 years. And trademarks, which are limited. All of those. So those are the ones that the government kind of steps in and says, "Hey, you get this." And so there have been some crazy ones in the U.S. The U.S. is all based on a production patent, um, which now everything's pretty much not production. It's other weird things. Like most of the recent patent wars have been over shapes of icons, shapes of phones. It's really kind of crazy. So, I mean, like some of that needs to be redone, right? It's kind of weird. Welcome to, the 21st century. So, political stability and good governance, there's another thing. Not much point in investing in a business if rioting mobs are likely to destroy it. The economic success of the U.S. has been possible because there's good laws. There's also institutions that enforce those laws and a stable political system that maintains those institutions. So you believe that the government is going to protect you, and you believe that the government won't allow people to just take your business. Um, like you get a successful business in some countries, the government will look at it and go, "Hey, you're doing really good there. I think I want that business. I think I'll take your business." And that doesn't end well. So East Asia's miracle. It took South Korea only 35 years to achieve growth that required centuries elsewhere. Since 75, the East Asian region has increased real GDP per capita by 6% per year, more than 3 times America's historical rate of growth. So how did they get there? Very high savings rates allow businesses to borrow to add more physical capital per worker. Very good basic education and substantial technological progress. So they've got the technology to do what they want. Um, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Growth can be especially fast in countries that are playing catch up to countries with higher GDP. And East Asian economies grew fast because they adopted the technology that already existed. And so that convergence hypothesis, differences in real GDP per capita among countries, tends to narrow over time. So everybody came together. But having that low real GDP per capita is no guarantee of rapid growth. Latin America and Africa, they just never got it together, man. It's just a thing. What's holding Argentina and Latin America back? Uh, Bad government for the main thing. Irresponsible government actions that eroded savings, lack of emphasis on education, and just political instability. So where South Korea grew, they did not. So you've got, uh, and well, let's just stop there, and I will start this on another. I'll start here on